Female serial killers were not unheard of in the time period. Female serial killers were not unheard of in the time period. The Roanoke area is haunted by many ghosts. The Roanoke area is haunted by many ghosts. Roanoke's bloody massacres weren't far off from history. Roanoke's bloody massacres weren't far off from history. Witchcraft was coming to prominence in the Roanoke era. Witchcraft was coming to prominence in the Roanoke era. The butcher's strange chant comes from an old Irish song. The butcher's strange chant comes from an old Irish song. The butcher's powers come from an Irish mythological figure. Before she was run out of Roanoke by other colonists, the butcher of American Horror Story was your average everyday settler. But, left alone in the wilderness to die, she was approached by ThomasinWhite, a witch who freed and saved her in exchange for her soul. It's this meeting, in the fiction of the show, that leads to the colony moving. But ThomasinWhite herself is an interesting figure. Her name comes from an Irish warrior woman and means the shadowy one, giving her and the butcher an interesting connection to classic myth. While there's nothing in ThomasinWhite's stories that talks about her being a witch or offering strangers pig hearts, it, like the inclusion of figures from history. The invented Thomasin was built off the real fears of the time period. American Horror Story is fiction, and its imagining of Thomasin White as a homicidal, which is entirely invention, but it's not hard to see how they came up with such a tale. The true story of the colony is rife with tragedy, and the lack of information about Thomasin makes her a perfect avenue to speculate about the more sinister versions of what might have happened there. Given early America's attitudes about witches and women, American Horror Story's butcher feels like a folktale of the era, or even like a Nathaniel Hawthorne-esque imagining of Puritan parables about morality and the wiles of women. Fictional or not, American Horror Story perfectly blends the fears of the historical setting with a twist of fantasy and modern horror. The Roanoke colony was doomed from the get-go. White's colony at Roanoke was seemingly doomed from the beginning, which, of course, provided ample room for the bloody reimagining of American Horror Story's 6th season. The colonists weren't supposed to settle at Roanoke at all, but their ship captain refused to let them back on board after they arrived. Once there, they found out the first colony had been wiped out by hostile native tribes. To top things off, it was late in the year, and there was little time left to plant crops to get them through the winter. Hostility between the native tribes and the colonists grew, especially because White's group attacked friendly native people by mistake. White returned to England to seek aid, but was stuck there for several years due to tensions between the English and Spanish. By the time he returned, the colony was mysteriously gone. Thomasin White is mysteriously missing from history. Thomasin White is harder to track than her husband, especially because she seems to vanish from all the records after their marriage in 1566. It's unclear whether Thomasin spelled Thomasin in American Horror Story accompanied John White to America, but that leaves enough room for speculation for AHS to blend fantasy and reality. Though the show's character is mostly an invention, the real lack of information about Thomasin means it's possible to write about her as a frightening figure without contradicting history. Of course, Thomasin probably wasn't a terrifying witch who performed human sacrifice. nor was there any evidence she was ever at Roanoke. John White was one of the founders of Roanoke. John White was one of the founders of Roanoke.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.